Welcome to the Free Game Don D podcast, life, family, and business. I'm messing up already, man. So Michael isn't here today, so I'm on my own. So clearly I'm messing up. But today's topic is excellence and transition. And I'm lucky enough to have Dr. Aaron Washington on the podcast today. And Dr. Aaron Washington has a PhD in chemistry. I don't think I've ever met anyone black with a PhD in chemistry. Wow, so that's phenomenal. So Dr. Washington graduated from Florida University with a bachelor's degree in science, and he also has a master's degree from Brown University, and he has a PhD from Florida State. And he was giving me some history here, man. He said he was the second black person to graduate from Florida State with a PhD in chemistry. So I was just like, okay, well, that's a lot. So Dr. Washington, man, our topic today is excellence and transition. So there's been a lot that you've gone through. There's been a lot you've accomplished. You currently are the technical project manager for a UK-based fusion startup called Tokamak Energy.
Yep.
And I know you travel a lot. Used to work out at SRS for 14 years in the lab out there. So you've done a lot of really cool stuff. I know that you serve on the board with Success Team. You own a business. You're an entrepreneur. You also own Tutor Doctor. You and your lovely wife, Maria. You're doing a lot of cool stuff, man. So, dude, man, I mean, talk to us, man. Talk to the Free Game Don Deep folks and tell us about yourself, man.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to you, Mr. Doe. I do call you Mr. Doe. I appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to come. I am born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm middle-class family. My mom was a retired nurse, 40 years. My dad was a police officer. Went to public schools my whole life. I know people were like, hey, this guy came from privilege and all of that. No, I came from the same place a lot of my African-American folks came from. I just had higher expectations and had expectations placed on me for what I can do. I've always been excited about science and started out loving science as a young person and just having that questioning attitude. And I tell parents whenever I get to talk to students or parents, students naturally question their environment, they question life, they question just everything that's going on. That is a great thing in terms of discovery, in terms of innovation and invention. Always want to nurture that and encourage them to continue to asking questions because it really drives where their career could go. And that's even if they're in the medical field or they're in the law field or they're going to work in a factory somewhere, someone that's always thinking forward and always asking questions about the status quo and the environment is always going to move ahead and move up in opportunity because of those attributes.
Wow. So let me ask you this, man, because you have an extensive resume here, but you've gone through some things through this process, and someone looking at a finished product right now, they're like, man, this dude, man, because you're so polished now. So just kind of talk about some of the things you've gone through. I know you talked about having expectations on yourself as far as what you wanted out of life, and I'm assuming you use a lot of that to fuel you. But can you just talk about I guess your journey here?
Right. So started out, like I mentioned, in Jacksonville, went to University of Florida as an undergrad. It's a predominantly white institution, just to be frank, very small minority enrollment at that school. So being in chemistry in University of Florida is somewhat isolating. So it's not a lot of people that look like you in your classes. Initially wanted to go to medical school, but decided that I really enjoyed the science more than I would say, no knock on any medical doctors, but the memorization of medical school is just not how I process information. So I realized I'm much more analytical and I enjoyed the science and the experimentation of chemistry. And so it was funny because my uncle was a medical doctor. He was an OBGYN for probably 40 years in the state of Florida. And he was my role model. He was the person that I saw as successful. He had 2 Corvettes when I was a kid. I think there were 82 Corvettes, and a couple Mercedes, and they had a nice house. And I'm like, man, this is great. How do I continue to grow and live like him? And when I decided to go to grad school, I felt like I failed him. I felt like I should have been a medical doctor as he was. And he came to me and told me, and he's passed away now, so he's still one of my biggest role models. But he came to me and told me that I am successful in my own right, and he's so proud of me. It's funny enough, I started working on nanomaterials, and I can explain more, but it's basically small particles. A great example for the layperson is, you ever heard of QLED TVs from Samsung?
Absolutely.
The Q is for quantum dots, which are nanoparticles, and that's how the screen has such clear resolution in it, is because of the materials that I used to make years ago. One of the recent studies that came out of Clemson University this past year was a woman, African-American woman, actually figured out a way to cure cancer using some of the techniques of the materials I used to make. What they would do is they would irradiate the nanoparticles, and the cancer would selectively be chosen by those particles to be eaten. And so then when you irradiate, or when you shine high energy at the person, the particles themselves will heat up and basically burn the cancer from the inside. So you're not damaging the whole person like you would do in normal radiation studies. You would just kill the cancer. And it's life-changing on how cancer treatments will evolve in the next few years, just because of what this African-American woman has done, using some of the materials that I helped to develop almost 20 years ago now. So it's pretty cool. But he was so proud of me. He actually invested in a nanomaterials company. He was like, I really want to follow the work that you're doing. And I was super excited. Going through graduate school, second African-American male to graduate from Florida State with a PhD in chemistry. First was in 2007. I was in 2009. Again, a bit isolating, right? So it's not a lot of people that look like you in the environments that you are. So I'm at conferences and I'm talking to people. I'm doing lectures and teaching students. And it's almost, an anomaly to be able to see someone like me in the classroom in the front. I used to play a joke on my students. A lot of times I walk in, I sit down like I was a student, and nobody knew that I was the professor most of the time, or the person that was teaching. And so they're like, oh, where's the professor? He's not here. And I was like, I've been here the whole time. I just kind of wanted to see how you guys were talking about me before I walked in the door.
Wow.
But I was 22 years old teaching classes and in chemistry at Florida State University. And it was amazing opportunity, and I still love teaching. That's one of my passions, is to be able to explain things to someone that doesn't understand that subject, and have them enlightened about the ability to now understand it because of me. So graduated 2009, started working at Savannah River National Lab here in Aiken, South Carolina. Had gotten married, had 2 kids, and from everybody's perspective, it was the perfect life. It was, hey, this guy has a house already at 26, and he has 2 kids already at 28, and he's married, and he's everything but the picket fence and the dog. Everything was just seemingly lining up. But there was so much more in me that I didn't realize. And so when I talk about transition, and I talk about trying to achieve excellence, it's always looking for the best of the situation that you're in, but also the opportunities that are coming next. And so as I'm working at the site, and I'm working to try to do better and try to always move things, there's a lot of friction there. There's a lot of hesitation, either because I was one of 3 Black PhDs in at the National Lab, probably 5 PhDs that were Black at the National Lab at that time. So partly maybe it was because I was the Black person out in the room making these crazy outlandish suggestions and going against the status quo, or because I was young. I was 26 years old when I started working there, fresh out of school, didn't have to do a postdoc, and it was amazing to be able to walk into certain places and certain high-level individuals and come at it with a different perspective, not only culturally, but just younger, right? Hey, you guys are, the average person working at the site was 52 years old when I started working there. It's gotten a lot better. They've tried to do better with transition and empowering young people to do more. But when I got there, most of the people were, I wouldn't say my parents' age, but definitely late 40s, early 50s. And so it's interesting.
Well, hold up now, Doc. Now, based on how old you were back then, they were your parents'
yeah,
age.
technically, I guess they could be my parents in some of those spaces. Yes. So My career started out pretty fast. I got promotions pretty quickly, really early, but then it stalled out. After 6 years, I didn't get a single promotion after that. And I continued to bring in millions of dollars of funding. I had over 10 patents that I have with the site today. I have over 25 publications over that time period, and struggled to get an opportunity to progress my career either in technical or in managerial experience. Even though I had great managerial characteristics and capabilities, it was difficult to find opportunities for me. And so the next, from 2015, 2016 up to 2023, when I left, was a struggle. It was particularly the last 3 years, which ultimately allowed me to take a step away and focus on the business. And so I started my first business, and I'm kind of just giving an overview of a lot of the things, so feel free to cut me off.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I started my first business in 2018, 2019. It was a
Dog, let me cut you off real quick. I feel like a fan over here. I'm just sitting here just like fanning out over here, man. Like, dude, like one of the smartest persons I ever talked to in my life. So I'm just sitting here like, this is what it would look like if I had took school seriously. So I'm just sitting here just like, I'm in awe. So just do you, bro. It's all about you, man.
Trying to continue to inspire other people to inspire other people to continue to do great things. So I am excited to be that example that people can look at what you can do when you apply yourself and you find something that's in your niche though. So I will even take a step back, and my first major in college was accounting, and I struggled. And so when I talk to people that are really good like yourself in business and finance, it took me a long time to be able to get to where I am and understand business now. In the beginning, I did not get it. And I had to change to the areas where my brain was more equipped to understand the information, and chemistry was that. So people always say, oh, you were in a really hard major. I feel like business and accounting was hard. And some people probably was like, oh, that's easy stuff. That's what I did. Or I think it's just the way that people are wired and how they process information. It's important to find your niche and really excel in that. You have opportunities as you grow to expand that into other areas. So we do business now. I would say I'm a pretty astute business person at this point in my career. But back then, understanding profit and loss statements, business balance sheet and EBITDA, things like that. I was like, I don't understand, supply and demand and all that kind of, like, I was like, this doesn't even make sense, even in my analytical brain. And I like numbers, I like math, and it's just not working. So I am all with people like you as well, because you've done this since when I was starting in science, you were doing business. And so that is something that is to be also applauded as well. So I appreciate the things that you bring to this conversation as well. Moving into the career, like I said, 2015, 2016 was kind of a big transition just in general. Like I said, that was looking back, that was the time I got my last promotion at the site, but also the time when my marriage was really failing. And so just being openly transparent, work was going supremely well, home was not. And so I had 2 kids. Like I said, from the outside, it looked like we were great and happy, but we were on the verge of divorce, and it was really, really failing, and ultimately ended in divorce. But it was a major motorcycle accident that happened in 2016. Yes, go ahead.
Hold up one second, because I do want to make sure we paint the right picture here, because you have a PhD in chemistry and you grew up in an environment where you had a mom and a dad initially, but mom and dad got a divorce. Yeah. And because there's some young people out here that they want to do great things, and they're growing up in an environment that abruptly kind of leaves them in a traumatic situation. So then on top of that, something happened with your father. So talk about your childhood, because people will see, you're talking about these accomplishments, and like I said, I'm in awe just listening. But talk about your childhood and some of the trauma that you've experienced as a child, and things you had to overcome to even get to this point.
Yeah. So I will go back to that point. I was born with 2-parent household, so my mom and dad were together when I was born. I did have an older sister and a brother, half siblings from my dad. But at 7 years old, the world changed. My parents got a divorce. My mom ended up moving back with her parents. My dad ended up staying in the house, ultimately selling the house and moving back with his parents. And so my older sister, used to live with us. She basically disappeared. I never really knew where she went. My dad ended up passing away at age 11, so that's additional trauma on top of the divorce. But I saw her at the funeral, and I didn't see her again until I was 20. And so, being a baby of the family, and my brother I didn't meet till I was 10. So all I knew was my sister growing up, And then her disappearing and me really feeling like I'm going through this divorce, moving back and forth between two parents by myself. Even though my family did the best they could, I will give them as much credit as possible to try to support me. But you're talking about a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old person that struggled, that used to get teased, was a little overweight as a kid, and, struggled with connecting with people outside of my mom and my dad, and some of my cousins that were there. So like I said, they did the best that they could to be a hedge of protection around me against things that were going on in the world. But inside of me, I felt alone. And so it was a struggle. Even my dad passing away is a traumatic story. I remember when I was at my dad's house. He had a stroke before I was born, but then age 11, he had a stroke while I was with him. It was just me and him in the house. And my dad was like, son, can you call the rescue? I think I'm having some heart issues. And I was like, I'll call mom. So I called my mom and I said, dad's not feeling well. I don't know what's going on. And of course she called the rescue or whatever. And he came. My mom was a nurse. And so she, did the right thing. But we had just had an argument. I had just fussed at my dad because he had done something with bacon. And I don't even honestly remember what it was, but he had done something with bacon, either didn't make it right or did something that I didn't expect. And I was like, Dad, you're crazy. Why are you making the bacon like that? And we had gotten this argument. He's like, son, what is the problem? And after that, he had the stroke. And then 3 days later, I don't want to say like Jesus, but he passed away. He had a heart attack in the hospital. So I remember, or maybe it was 2 days later. That was a Friday. I went to go visit him on Saturday. We played cards and just had fun. And then early Sunday morning, my mom woke me up like 3:00. He was already gone when we got to the hospital. So it was.
Just let me make sure, because by the end, mom and dad are divorced, right?
Yes.
So you were just with dad on the weekends?
Yes.
And okay, understood. Let me ask you this too. Wow. So of course that was very, very traumatic. Was there any other, and not to move past dad, we're gonna still stay on dad, but when you're telling your story here, were there any other men that played a major role in your life to help you get to this point? So touch on that as well.
Yeah. So my Uncle Kent. So my mom's brother, one of my mom's two brothers, was basically, as I mentioned earlier, he's like a role model to me. And so he took me to school a lot of the times. He did a lot, just did a lot. I spent a lot of time at his house. His son is like a brother for me. And so he was very instrumental in me not only pursuing science, but learning how to be a man. My stepfather. So my mom did end up getting remarried, which initially added to the trauma that I was going through. Unfortunately, she's doing what she can. She picked a good man. But just with all the things that I had gone through with losing my father and him being just different person than my father. And realistically, kids only know what you show them. Unfortunately. Right. And yes, they observing, and you say kids see everything. Kids don't always see everything. My dad wasn't really the best person in terms of being faithful to my mom. And he also had some other issues with drugs and stuff like that. And so it was a lot that I didn't know. And so, in my eyes, and my sister always used to say, they always shielded stuff from you. Then, you were the golden child. You didn't see all the crazy stuff because she was 7 years older. So she was, 15 and I'm 7 when they got divorced. And so she's older. But she used to always say, you're the golden child because they didn't show you all the stuff that I had to see with dad. And it was like, yeah, I thought he was amazing. So then another man comes in my mom's life and, he drinks. I never saw my parents. It's crazy. I know my parents drink because they drink now. I never saw my parents drink a single time. The first time I seen my mom have a drink was when I was 21. And it literally, I know maybe I was 19, but I just remember when she first took the drink, I just literally froze. And I was like, my mom drinks. She just had like a glass of wine. And I was like, and she never said a curse word. And that was something else that happened like when I was like 20 or 21. I know she did, but I never heard it. So you get this.
You said something powerful, though. Look, I do have to touch on this because I think that, I know your older sister was saying they shielded you from certain things. But here's the thing. I think that your parents were just doing what they were doing. She was just old enough to probably know, okay, you're trying to hide this from me, but I still know what you're doing. You were just young. That's all. Correct. I don't even think they were necessarily, trying to treat you differently. I just think that you were not able to decipher certain things that the older siblings could decipher. But shout out to them for trying to keep you out of certain situations, because all parents don't do that.
Absolutely.
So, you know what I'm saying? So we all know, me and you both, we know all too well how some of that stuff works out. So, but your parents did the best that they could do not to show you certain things, man. So I think that that's really to be commendable.
Agreed.
To your parents, because more parents need to do that.
Right. Your children, and my wife and I talk about this all the time. They need to see certain things. They need to see you guys in conflict and conflict resolution. They don't need to see everything, and they don't need to be privy to everything. They don't need to be in every conversation, and they don't need to have a say in all the decisions. Yeah. And at the end of the day, a child should stay in a child's place. And you need to be able to take authority, to take direction, and to take correction from an adult, and learn how to be respectful of your parents and your adults in your life. Yeah,
because there were things going on clearly in the marriage where mom was fed up with certain things, but you had no idea that dad had all these things going on. You're just like, dad's my hero. And that's the way it's supposed to be. If you're listening to this and you're going through some issues with your husband and wife, it's supposed to be that way. The child isn't supposed to know all the deep, dark secrets of mom or dad or infidelity. You don't bring kids into stuff like that. So,
right.
So shout out to your parents. I just think that was really commendable, because enough parents don't do that.
No, and I see it a lot with kids. They say, "Oh, I heard my dad was cheating," or "I heard my mom was cheating," or "I heard this, that, and the other." And it's like, you're like 9. Why are you having these conversations with these kids? These are not the people that you're supposed to vent to. These are not the people that's supposed to be your confidant at young age, even teenagers. Why are they in your business? They should know your dad and your mom aren't together if this is a situation you're dealing with, and we are working to co-parent you the best we can. That's all they need to know. And then we are making decisions as a united front.
Yeah, I'm sitting there laughing because I'm thinking about situations where I've seen this kind of stuff happen. Like, you're confiding in your child, like that's your friend, lady.
Ain't your friend. I don't have any teenage friends. I have kids. Right. I don't have any friends below the age of probably 35 or
come on, man,
something like that. So I don't need my kids to be my friend. I need them to be my children. Jeez. And I tell them today, I hope that we are friends when you're an adult, because that means that you have the same values that I have, because I feel like that's how you choose your friends.
Yeah, man. Come on, man. Yeah, you're a young person, man. Listen, we're not friends. You're my mentee, if anything, if you're not family, but we're not friends.
Right.
I always thought that was just really weird. So you go through this transition where mom remarries, and I think that, because you've been through that in your personal life, so you kind of can see how the trauma that kind of is inflicted on a child, seeing mom get remarried, but I'm assuming mom is still married to this gentleman.
Yep. Wow. My stepdad is still there. He's my dad now. I just call him dad. Phenomenal man. He's the person I always say that took me from the young boy to being a man. And a lot of the ways that I parent my children, a lot of the ways that I carry myself in my household are reflections of the things that he's shown me as being a man to my mom. And I always appreciate him for stepping in the gap when a young person came into his life, because he doesn't have any children of his own. So I don't have any half siblings or step siblings from him. So I'm all he has. And so I always appreciate him for being that person for me.
Wow. Whew. Yeah. Shout out to dad. That's wow. Phenomenal person. So you went to school, you got your degrees, PhD in chemistry, you get married. Let's get into some of that, man. All right. Let's get into some of that.
So I started dating my ex-wife when we were in college. It was in my second semester of my first year in college, and we dated basically throughout undergrad and grad school. We got married while I was still in graduate school. She's 2 years older, so she had already finished. She did a master's. So I was at Florida State. She was at University of South Florida in Tampa. I was in Tallahassee. We did the 4-hour commute back and forth, and we ended up getting married. And like I said, my third year, something like that in grad school. Then we ended up getting pregnant with my oldest son in 2008. And so of course she had him in March of 2009, but that was really the catalyst for me to get out, because my professor really enjoyed the work that I was doing. I think I had 2 published papers after I left. And so he was not excited about me graduating, but he also understood life. And he said, you need to graduate because you're about to be a father and you need to have a job and go do that. Because as a professor, he had actually 2 young kids. When we were having this conversation back in 2008 or so, his kids were 2 and 4. And he understood the balance of life and family as a precedence over trying to continue to do more research in 16-hour days, which is craziness that graduate students do research and really underpaid. But that's okay. You move on because you end up usually getting good jobs afterwards. But doing science and research, it is a long, arduous process in terms of getting a PhD and really trying to find a theoretical hypothesis and trying to prove it out. But got married, moved to Aiken. It was really an interesting situation. We moved here with a baby and both having new jobs. So new city, no family nearby. Her family's from Miami. My family is from Jacksonville. So my parents were, of course, closest. So they used to come up more. But being isolated in the city, not knowing anybody, basically just getting a job out of the blue. And then we both started working at the Savannah River site. It was a challenge, right? I wouldn't recommend that scenario to most people because we didn't have a chance. Because even when I was in school, we were living in different cities. So the first time we lived together, we brought a kid into the situation. So we didn't have a chance to grow together before that. In addition to the new city, no babysitters that we knew. We didn't have any family here, any of that kind of stuff. And so a lot of transitions at the same time that didn't allow us to grow together and really explore if this marriage was really what we wanted, right? We only spent the first year and a half dating together. The rest of the 4 years of dating and the first 2 years of marriage, we were living apart.
But y'all stayed married for how long?
12 years. So we got married in 2009. No, sorry, 2007. We had our son in 2009, and we got divorced in 2019.
Wow. So you were married to 12 years, and did you ever feel like you ever really truly knew your first wife?
No. I knew a lot of what she valued, and I learned the fact that those values weren't the same as mine. And so it taught me a lot about it taught me a lot about myself, what you learn to accept from other people, and what makes a healthy relationship. As this one was failing, I'm a scientist. It's hard to turn it off. I think about it in daily life. So I'm analyzing, okay, this relationship isn't working because of what? What can I do better in this relationship? Because it takes 2 to mess something up. Chris Rock, I have to give credit where credit's due, says 2 people can move a couch real easy. 1 person can't move it at all. And I was like, dang, that's so true, right? 2 people can pick it up and get it going. In any relationship, it takes 2 people committed to make it work. I went to counseling, and I ended up going to counseling for a lot longer. But me and the counselor were talking at one point, and he said, to be honest with you, you guys have, relatively speaking, this is, based on opinion, minor issues compared to some, right? So he's like, I've counseled people that have had multiple kids outside of the marriage, or had physical abuse on each other, or financial where they're just in bankruptcy together. You guys both have good jobs. You don't really have any debt. You don't have any physical abuse. You don't really have any infidelities or anything. But you guys are struggling. And it really just comes down to the point of people that are committed to be together and committed to make things work can work through anything. If you're not committed, it doesn't matter if it's just something small as somebody don't like taking out the trash. It will tear it apart. And so that's...
So let me ask you this, because y'all were married for 12 years, and even though you didn't grow up in an environment where mom and dad stayed together, you still seemingly believed in the idea of making this thing work. Because it sounds like early on you realized that we're not evenly yoked here. So it's kind of like on the job training. Like I said, I don't really know. I think I know her, but now that I'm with her, I'm realizing we don't really know each other. But you still stayed married, and I'm assuming that's because y'all have 2 children together. So you seem like you tried to hang in there. And I think a lot of guys can relate, and women too. So it's not just men. I think a lot of folks can relate to staying in something because you have the children. And I always ask folks, like, let me ask you something. If you didn't have those kids, would y'all still be together? If y'all didn't have kids, like, how long would that have really lasted?
Probably 2 to 3 years.
Right. So you believe in the idea of marriage and all that entails, right? I mean, just kind of speak to some of that, how you finally came to the conclusion, like, hey, this is not going to work.
So I say 2 to 3 years. It probably would have been a little bit longer because I do believe in the sanctity of marriage, and you pledge before God that you are going to commit to this person. It would have lasted longer, but one of the things, like I said, I didn't know is us not cohabitating together while married for the first couple of years prevented us from being able to really know day in and day out how this person interacts, what are their values, what are the frustration points. And so you're having to learn that with the stress of a new child was a difficulty. But without kids, knowing her today and knowing the things that she values, we are very much opposites on a lot of things. And I feel like marriages can work with people that you are opposite with, but I think at the core, you have to have the same values. And so there's likes and dislikes, and then there's values, right? I can like the fact that I can dislike the fact that you leave socks on the floor. Probably women probably like, yes, God, thank you. Or I can dislike the fact that you drive the car around women and don't fill it up and then come back and like, the car's on empty. I don't know. I passed 15 gas stations, but I'm sorry, I didn't fill it up for you. You can dislike certain things, but, sexual habits, sexual needs, financial planning habits, savers, spenders, yada, yada, yada. Whether you want to have kids or not, what is your faith like? There are some non-negotiables on things that just will cause way too much division on even submissiveness. One of your recent podcasts on how you view leadership and order in the marriage. Is the man first? Is the woman equal to the man? Is the man, what is your view? I know what my view is. My view is basically as the Bible describes it, is God first. And it's funny.
So was that a problem in the marriage?
Yeah, it was more competitive. It was more of trying to outcompete me. So
how do you compete with your spouse?
That was the frustration
We're the same
part,
team,
right?
Man.
And it wasn't the same team. It was really trying to, why are you shining in this area? And you're getting all these opportunities for nonprofits and boards, and you're getting opportunities at the site, and your schedule is flexible, and you're getting these awards.
She see your resume?
Yeah.
Can you see all this stuff I sent free game? You don't know who I am?
I mean, it's interesting because I remember when I got my first promotion, I came home and I was like, hey, we gotta be able to celebrate. This is something that I'm doing and I'm excited, And she was like, what are you celebrating for? And then same thing happened to her. Wow. And she said, so she got a promotion, and I said, hey, I actually bought some wine, I bought some flowers, and I said, hey, we're gonna celebrate your thing. She was like, well, I already said, why are you celebrating? This is just something that's normal day. So the things in terms of even progress and moving forward in your career was not things that she was willing to celebrate. So that's just different values. That's different perspectives on the same thing. So we're competing against each other, but we're also not even valuing how we appreciate accomplishments. So yeah. So moving forward.
So let me ask you this, because y'all got a divorce, and I've had a lot of fathers on this show, and I'm noticing a commonality is like, we all got to fight for our rights to be a father. So you got to compete within the marriage, and now I got to compete to be a parent once we get a divorce. So can you speak to that? Because I know you told me y'all got a divorce, and you were one of those fathers that just did not want to be a weekend dad. So you decided, hey, I need shared custody. I need 50-50, and kind of talk about that a little bit.
That was a process as well. So initially, I tried to work with her. I said, this is not working. We need to get a divorce. We just need to go our separate ways and figure out how to co-parent these kids. She was not willing to do that. She didn't want to get a divorce. I felt like she was hurt in some areas and just wanted to take the misery out on me, and kind of found pleasure somehow into doing that. But it was me coming to her and saying, hey, well, I actually hired this lawyer to write up a draft document. He says, if we are able to agree and work out the terms, then the cost will be very minuscule, and we can just file it and be done. I think it was like $3,000. It was like, hey, just do this one flat thing. We can work it out, sit at the dining room table and work out what we're going to do with the kids. and be done. She didn't want to do that. She would not even look at it. And she's like, no, I'm gonna hire my own attorney. So basically it was a fight at that point. Initially my first attorney screwed me. He basically put in a blanket agreement that I would get every other weekend, assuming that was okay with me, and signed off, and the judge signed off, and I actually got a letter in the mail saying, hey, this is your new custody agreement. And I was like, what? I didn't even read it. So that put me behind the 8 ball. So I took that point to start fighting. I mean, it was definitely a depression point from then, at least for the next 3 to 6 months. I remember it was a September 2018 when I got that letter. So I moved out March of 2018. I think we had the conversation the previous Thanksgiving time in 2017 about getting a divorce. But I moved out in March. And I got the letter in September after I'd hired the guy in that summer. And I'm like, wait, what did you sign up for? And he was like, oh, I thought this was okay. I'm like, no, I didn't even read it. He's like, well, my clients normally don't read it.
Jesus.
Guys, always read your stuff. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is so much stuff that you just talked about because I can relate to this. Unfortunately, I wish I couldn't. But they have something called like a mutual agreement attorney. So, and that's the route that I actually went as well. But then my ex decided, no, it's going to be a fight. And so shout out to you because I think a lot of men, like, they don't want it to be a fight. I mean, like, you're thinking about the kids, you're thinking about, you just want this thing to be as smooth as possible, if possible, and us all to try to work together. But that didn't seem like that was the way things went with you. And it seemed like it was a lot. It's just very toxic, seems like. And you don't even seem like the kind of guy that would want to even engage in, toxic behavior. But once she gets a lawyer or he gets a lawyer, once one of the spouses gets a lawyer, it's on now. I mean, because I got to fight now. I mean, I didn't want it to be this, because once it's this, it's kind of hard to come back from this, right? And so just talk about that process.
So, and to your point, the lawyer is just that. You have to keep that in mind. Lawyers are being paid to win for their clients. So once either side gets a lawyer, it is literally a fight. And so trying to figure out a way to work it out, because at the end of the day, the courts do whatever you say. So if you two get together and say, this is what we're going to do, the court doesn't care. They're like, yep, go ahead, sign off, because they want to spend the least amount of time as possible. Matter of fact, even getting a court date is nearly impossible because you have to go through so many mediations and all this kind of stuff. And so anyway, yeah, so it started out with that craziness of getting a lawyer, and we've been through 4 mediations to date. So if anybody wants to do the math and figure out, there's tens of thousands of dollars that I've spent on legal fees and trying to get time, but moving.
Now, why are you having all these mediations, Dr. Washington?
So the reason why is each mediation, I would say for me, I've learned more, and I also had to chip away at things. So as a father, it is frustrating knowing that there are deadbeat dads, I'll just say it out there, that don't care enough about their kids to fight for time and provide them with a high quality of life, focusing on education, focusing on health. Like, they're not providing that for their families or for their children. And so as a father that is focused on education, focused on well-rounded upbringing, wanted to instill values in their kids, one of the things I knew how their mom operates, I wanted to make sure that they had enough exposure from me to have a balance in how that upbringing is going to be. I feel like you have 2 parents for a reason. I'm not taking away what their mom provides them, but they need to get what I'm giving them as well. And so every mediation was a chip away at trying to get more time. So initially it was every other weekend. Then it went to, I want to say 4 or 5 days for me, every other week. And then she had the balance. Then it went to 6 days, and she had 8 days. And that was just really petty, because it's like, you just fighting for like $250 of child support that you're going to get. In the beginning, it was over $1,000, right? So it was every other weekend. I have a good job. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm paying well over $1,000 per month to try to get her, and she sees that money and she doesn't want to give it up. So I'm like, I want you to give it up so I can have more time with the kids. You're more focused on the money. This is not okay. So by the end of it, the judge even said, this is so complicated, I can't even figure out who has what when. Just do week to week and just call it a day. And then he said, and you guys at the time, we made about the same amount of money. She said, the child supports are washed. You guys make the same. If you're providing the same amount of care, you're buying stuff when they're with you, she's buying stuff when they're with her. Why are y'all even having this discussion except for trying to be greedy and get more for what you don't deserve if the other person wants to be an active parent in their life? So
do you think that maybe she wanted to be the, I guess, the primary custodian? I mean, or was she? I mean, because somebody has to be the, you know.
I think it was more of the perception, and it's you know, I got these kids, their dad left us, and we got this struggle, and you know, I'm trying to raise them and making sure that I am doing the best for them, and it's more about perception than reality. And because then anybody that knows the situation is like, no, that's not true. He was at the school last week, just coming by to see the kids, or he's at every doctor's appointment, literally. So we had to hire 3 different guardian ad litems. All 3 of them said that I was just as active, if not more, involved in the kid's life than she was. Because in the beginning, she's a workaholic. She worked. She also taught, and it's like at the gym. And so it was me taking them to most of their doctor's appointments, me taking them to their activities, and me also when my daughter, she had a major accident, not accident, but more of a brain injury. She ended up having surgery. I'm the one that actually described it to the doctor and was able to articulate what happened so they can perform the right procedure on her and figure out what the best path was. And it's like, I built this relationship over a number of years where she really hadn't. And so instead of trying to start from where it was, like, hey, you know what, we're divorced, I need to work on my relationship with these kids and really build something healthy, she tried to tear mine down. She tried to really say, it's got to be one or the other. It went back to the competition thing. It's like, you can't love your dad and love being with him and having fun and also love me and love being with me and having fun. I don't understand why the two are separate, but they both can be true, right? You can love being with your both parents at different times if they're not together. I think that's something that's healthy.
And let me say this too, because I know when we chopped it up earlier, man, you talked about how you were more the hands-on parent. I mean, I guess that probably didn't happen a lot in marriages where the husband is more of the hands-on parent, and so you think that was an issue as well? Maybe just feeling like, you know, you're gonna love this is weird to even say that you're gonna love your dad more than me type, you know, competition here.
Yep. That's literally what I experienced, and even verbally saying, you know, why are you having fun over at your dad's house? Are you sure? Or
so mad that they're having fun over there.
And I'm like, why does it matter? Why is there one relationship dependent on the other? Why can't it be interdependent for that child to love both parents equally and separately, if that's the nature of what's going on? And so, yeah, it was a big journey over. I'd say our last one was last year. So it's been a journey that still continued and finally ended with 50-50, and it's still a battle. I control the medical and she controls school and activities, and so activities is still a struggle because, you know, we can't always agree on how we're structuring them to make it efficient and effective for both families. So I got remarried. My wife and I, we have 5 kids together. It is a blessing, but it's busy, right? We got 15, 14, 7, and 2. We're a blended family, a wonderfully blended family. But it's busy. All 4 of the older kids are doing things. Of course, the baby is not really just going to daycare, but that is a lot to balance. And I do travel for work and other things. And so it is making sure that we're not setting our house up to be chaotic and basically up for failure, and also overcommitting the kids to make sure they have time to get their schoolwork done and get to sleep. Parents, your kids should be sleeping at least 8 to 9 hours a night, as much as possible. You can look at any AMA guidelines you'd like to say, I think infants sleep 16 to 20 hours a week. I think toddlers drop down to like 12 to 15 or something like that. Young kids like 8 to 10 drop down to like 8 to 10 hours. But it never gets lower than 7 to 9 hours, which is what an adult's supposed to sleep. And so if your kids are going to bed at 11 and waking up at 5 or 6 to go to school, that's not enough rest. That's not enough to be productive. You got to look at the body rejuvenating, oxygenation of the brain, and being able to have good muscles and brain muscle. And it's like you have to make sure that's a priority in terms of having healthy kids. You can't just push them to the point of exhaustion.
You sound like you about to do a science project
Okay.
on these kids, man. Good Lord. But no, I'm here for it, though, man. You talk about the garden at Lightham
Yep.
very briefly. A lot of fathers get in this situation where they have to pay for a garden at Lightham. It's just a lot, man. You're literally fighting for time. I hate to use the word fighting, but that's what you're doing. I mean, you're fighting for relevance in the life of your own child. Um, even I know you said even as late as a year ago, as early as a year ago, you were fighting. Like,
Yep.
that's kind of traumatic. Even you as a grown man, I mean, that's still a lot to have to go to court and fight for relevancy and fight for things that we really shouldn't have to fight about. We both want what's best for maybe we don't. I don't know because sometimes I think that some parents, male or female, may do things to think that we're hurting the other spouse, but you're really hurting the child. So, but if we're both doing what's best for the child, let's make this work for all parties involved, so that so they can see us act, act accordingly and just do what's in their best interest, man. But man, you've been through a lot, man. That's why we wanted to start with all the good stuff, man. I was like, man, because people, they gonna look at you. They're not even gonna believe that you went through all this kind of stuff. And you even had a really bad car accident. Motorcycle accident. You almost lost your life, man.
I can talk a little bit about that. So I, as a part of my frustration in my relationship, I wanted to get some escape. And a lot of that escape was riding my motorcycle. I'd always dreamed of having one since I was in college and never had the opportunity to really buy one, and just said, I'm just going to go do it. I was riding. I think I rode over 1,000 miles in like 1 or 2 months. And I wasn't even riding as a daily rider. This was after going to work, coming home and still jumping on the bike. It was a way of escape. And end up not doing any hot riding or, doing any wheelies or anything, but literally just going too fast around a curve, drifted into the other lane. The car was a little bit too far in my lane, and we hit and head-on collision with the SUV, flipped over. Fortunately, the bike didn't hit me, but it was, end up 3 or 4, maybe 5 feet from water, which would have been very traumatic to be able to land in water with the injuries I had. I had a broken tib fib, so tibia fibula. I fractured my femur. I had an open book fracture on my pelvis, and I broke my hand, as well as we didn't realize until the 3rd day of in the hospital, I had a flap on my aorta. The aorta is the largest artery coming from the heart, for people that don't know. So a flap means you are leaking blood very, very fast. And so after day 1, I actually got a unit of blood because they thought I was leaking from my pelvis, but they didn't realize that I was literally dying on the table. I had talked to a cardiologist later. So, and essentially what happened was they, after that 2nd day, and I was low again. So okay, get into the science terms. My hemoglobin was usually around 15, which is normal for a guy. It dropped down to like a 6, which is critical. Like anything below really a 7 is kind of critical, but it was literally 5.96. And so they immediately gave me a unit of blood, which made me feel a lot better. But they thought it was just because of the surgeries. I had 9 surgeries, but they were like, okay, he's just, losing a lot of blood or whatever. The cardiologist came in and said, hey, let's do a chest x-ray. They realized that I had the flap on the 3rd day. The cardiologist was like, we're going to give you some medicine. It might be a rough night, which basically meant, say, if you don't survive the night, but he didn't say it that way. If it doesn't heal by tomorrow, all this other surgery is going to stop because it's just extremities, so bones and things like that. We're going to life flight you to Emory, and for them to do open heart surgery on you because we can't do it here. And this was Augusta University, great orthopedic center. They definitely took care of me. So that was a rough night. So I woke up the next day. As much as I did sleep, if I did at all, I don't know. But and it was closed. They did an chest x-ray the next day, and the aorta was closed. So I am 0.25% chance to be alive having a flap on your aorta after 3 days with no treatment. And so the cardiologist was like, you're a walking miracle. He's like, yeah, all of these, of course you could have died on the scene. You could have died in transport, been into cardiac arrest. You could have died while you were sitting in ICU. You could have died on the surgery table. I mean, we had 2 procedures before they figured out that I was having leakage in my aorta. So it is a blessing, and is one of the catalysts that has caused me to always strive for excellence in transition because it's like I have a new chance at life. My dad passed away at the age of 35. This accident happened at the age of 34. I almost didn't even outlive my dad.
Wow. Listen, man, you've been through a lot of stuff, man, and you're still here. I like that excellence in transition, man. It's been a lot of transitioning, but you're still maintaining a high level of excellence. Speaking of excellence, man, shout out to your lovely wife, man.
Yes.
Talk about how y'all met because, that's excellence personified. She's amazing. So talk about Maria.
She is everything. So my wife and I, and this is a crazy story. It's literally God putting us together. So we met on a dating app. So dating app we use with Bumble. I was taking a trip with.
So Bumble is the app because I don't.
Bumble is the app.
Okay,
So
right.
people think about Tinder and think about Black, and I think Facebook now has a dating app or something like that. But Bumble was one of the ones back in the day. It was actually got pretty big. I used to see it on some of the NBA jersey logos, and so they actually were a pretty big sponsor, I think. But it was actually one of the better dating apps that I tried. To be honest, I also tried Match. I didn't try eHarmony.
I can't see you on a dating app, man.
Well, I'm gonna tell you the reason why I actually started doing it was because there was a guy at work who told me, he was like, "How are you meeting people?" And I said, "Well, that's a good question." He's like, "You're at work, you go to the gym, you go to grocery shopping, you go home. Like I'm not a partier. I'm not going to the club. I'm not going to the bar." He's like, "Where are you gonna meet somebody?" He said, dating app allows you to meet people really efficiently. You can kind of sort through them. And if you use the right process, and I really want to write a book about this at some point of how to date on a dating app. It's a process to this. You have to filter them out. Like you got to start out with messaging on the app. Then they have to graduate to texting. Then you got to graduate to video chat. Then you got to graduate to public dates. It's like, somebody that you meet on the app and you go on a date with them the next day, that's craziness, right? How do you filter out people to be able to make sure that they are of sound mind, let's just say like that, and not anything crazy. But so anyway, I jumped on the app and kind of met some pretty cool people and just kind of were swiping right, swiping left on people and kind of saying what's going on. And I was traveling for work. I actually went out to New Mexico. This is where my wife was living at the time. Back then, the app had a radius of 100 miles that you had to be within the person in order to see them, to connect with them. When I traveled out to New Mexico, I was actually going up to Los Alamos National Lab. So that's about 2 hours north of Albuquerque, where the airport is. It's too far for the app to work. My wife actually lived in Albuquerque. And so the only chance that I was able to connect was in the airport because I'm not like I didn't have dinner or do anything in Albuquerque. I just flew out, got a rental car, drove up to Los Alamos when I was getting ready to leave at the end of the week. I drove back down to Albuquerque, dropped the car off. He was getting ready to get on the plane to leave. The only reason I had time was because my flight was delayed. So since my flight was delayed for an hour and a half, I just had nothing to do with sitting in the airport. And so I just pulled up the app and just started swiping because I was bored.
Wow.
And I swiped on her. I remember vividly seeing her. I was like, "Oh, she looks nice." Swiped. I didn't even think anything of it. And of course, she has to swipe.
What about
back
the
on me.
filters, man? You didn't filter everything out, or was the app already set up with the filters?
No.
So you knew she was a match.
Let me explain a little bit better. So the filters are kind of the mindset I have for how you move from swiping to dating, right? It's a process. Now the part of that process is the app itself. So one of my rules were if you didn't have at least 6 pictures, full body and face shots, as well as your full profile filled out, I did not swipe on you. So it's to me, if you don't have the work ethic to just at least fill out a dating app, why would you have the work ethic for being in a relationship? Maybe you just out here playing, looking for something on the side or something.
Okay.
But I'm looking for something serious. Like I'm not out here just trying to just get some. I'm out here trying to find my wife that's going to set me up for success.
You were a single dad at the time.
I was a single dad at the time. I had 2 kids. So I'm like, if you don't have enough effort to put the information into the app, then I'm not going to waste my time to swipe on you. So she passed that test. But then that's when the process started. So we started texting on the app, and then we started texting on phone, and then we got on the phone call. Another stage gate that I use for people is if your first conversation doesn't go longer than 3 hours, that's not the person for you. You should not be able to meet somebody for the first time, at least the first conversation, and not have enough information to talk for more than 3 hours. Because you have to think about it, right? You don't know anything. I mean, you've been texting, but you really don't know anything about them. They don't know anything about you. Either you're a bad communicator or your communication styles don't match, or that's not they don't have the same values, because as you start to converse, just like we do. We'll say to anybody, if you meet somebody that's real cool, you might chop it up for 2-3 hours and you might lose track of time. You're like, man, this is a cool guy. Yeah. You know, you don't have to always be dating, but just anywhere you resonate with people that have similar values.
Sure.
So that's kind of the process.
But so y'all moving fast. So how long after dating did y'all get married?
We did move fast. So, and shout out to my wife. I'm about to throw some dates out, so I'm trying to get some brownie points. So we connected on the app sometime in May. I'm not going to remember that one. But we actually started talking on June 4th. My birthday was June 6th. I actually went to go spend my birthday with somebody else. So that's interesting. She knows the story. I mean, I was playing the field a little bit. Her birthday is on July 15th. And so, July 13th. My daughter's birthday is July 15th. I just lost 15 points right there.
Yeah, you did.
Oh my goodness. So, so I went to go see her for her birthday back out in New Mexico, and we had a wonderful time. And we started talking consistently. The person I was talking to before, I basically cut that off. I was like, oh man, this person might be something serious. And in August 14th, we started dating officially. That was August 14th of 2019. So you know what's about to come up. COVID came up March of 2020. She actually came to visit a couple times and meet the kids. She brought her kids to meet the kids. They really got along. And I proposed to her in, oh man, don't make me lie. I want to say August of 2020. We got married September 27, 2020. So basically within a year, we went from dating, just meeting, to married. And best decision ever. And
she's been the love of your life. She's great. And you guys, you're partners. I think that's what I love about. But you went from being in a marriage to being in a partnership, with your second wife. It's like, and I think that's what I love. But you guys own Tutor Doctor. You guys have a lot of good stuff going on together. And speak to that real quick.
Yeah, it's amazing how being with the right person, I think it was Minister Farrakhan or somebody that said it, said being with the wrong person makes you half of yourself. Being with the right person allows you to do more than you even thought you could do. A lot of the things that we do with our business, with me working for this company and the travel, we're working on real estate stuff. All of these things that I could never imagine doing before today. Like it is amazing having the right supportive spouse and partner with aligned vision. So one of the things, I'll just talk about this real briefly. One of the things that the counselor used to tell me is that, a relationship is like a house. The walls of that house is basically shared values and communication. Then the roof of that house really becomes shared vision. And so you can have great values and communication, but not everybody makes it to having that shared vision where you both are going to the same place. You both can see, even if it's different perspectives, right? You want to have somebody that has different perspectives to not only check you, but also making sure that you're evaluating all the opportunities that you have coming towards you, but you're going to the same end goal. And if you have somebody with that same shared vision, and we established that really early on in our relationship, but hey, I really want to own a business. I really want to own a business too. I've been thinking about that for years, and my wife was married before too. And she was like, yeah, my ex would never have thought about that. And I was like, yeah, I'm with you. So I was like, now we're together. She's like, well, what's stopping us? And it's nothing. And, we got the right opportunity. God started moving again. We couldn't find daycare for our baby when we were pregnant with our baby girl. Everything was 12 to 18 months out. And so she had to end up leaving her job. She was regional director of like 9 or 11 clinics or something in New Mexico. So she's really high up. And then she comes to Augusta and really and not able to find a lot of things. So she ended up working for the city of Augusta, met a lot of great people there. But she ended up having to leave after a few months just because we couldn't find daycare. That wasn't the intention. And so I said, well, honey, what do you want to do? She's like, we've been talking about this business. Let's do it. I said, I'm in. I said, I can do the sales. I love education. I love all of the things that the business talks about, but I don't like hiring people and I don't like managing people. And so she's like, well, I do that all day, every day, easy. And I said, you know what? I do enjoy hiring good people, and I do enjoy managing and mentoring people. I didn't mean to say it
You don't
that
want that
way.
to be taken the wrong. Yeah, behind every good man or great man is a phenomenal woman.
Phenomenal.
So shout out to Maria. She's the real MVP. So
Absolutely.
that's what they say about Michael too. So they give Michael credit for everything. So
They are two great women. Maybe they should come and do
just-
something like this because they would tell a story. I better be interested.
yeah, that would be. No, I'm gonna make sure the equipment isn't working because Michael will get up here. She's gonna be telling all kind of crazy stories about me, man.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Doe. I'll try to give you a little plug, but it sounds like you're getting shut down.
Listen, this will conclude the episode of Excellence and Transition with Dr. Aaron Washington, Free Game Don D, Life, Family, and Business.
Peace.